Got past the rope, I dive right in. Want and desire, I hope to fit in. I play by the rules and I'll get what I want. But step to the chief and I'll take the brunt of pleasures and pain, and there's more than enough. Got love for my friends, well that could be tough. How did I end up here? Now I'm a slave to the party. I need the noise, give it the beer. I got no choice. Slave to the party. I want all the lights. Lost in the darkness, I can't see no light. Slave to the party. I need the noise, give it the beer. I got no choice. Slave to the party. I want all the lights. Lost in the darkness, I can't see no light. I'm feeling the flow, the power of the groove. What am I serving, or what do I approve? I'm told to forget all that I know. My God, it's a party, let's put on a show. No one considered what's right or what's wrong. All that will matter is that I belong. How did I end up here? 'Cause I'm slave to the party. I want the noise, give in the fear. I got no choice. Slave to the party. I need all the lies. Lost in the darkness, I can't see no light. Slave to the party. I want all the noise, give in the fear. I got no choice. Slave to the party. I need all the lies. Lost in the darkness, I can't see no light. I built an idol and dance to the beat. I drink my feeling, something to eat. It has a way of ending you. It has a way of measuring your price. What's your price? Free from the party, free from the noise, free from the fear, I got my choice. Free from the party, I see all the lies. Free from the darkness, I see the light. Free from the party, free from the noise, free from the fear, I got my choice. Free from the party, I see all the lies. Free from the darkness, I see the light.
All right. Hold on. How's everybody doing? We're back. I know you missed us. At least I missed me. That was Josh Gillespie. Some of y'all have seen some of Josh's stuff up until now. That's his new single, Slave to the Party. You can find it here on Linktree at the bottom. You definitely want to check it out. He's actually got a whole album coming out, but that's the second single. And we're a little rusty. I haven't done this for a few weeks, but the good news is when I decided to come back out of our hiatus here, that we decided to do it with a bang. And so I couldn't think of anybody better to do it with than my buddy Trey Radel, who was with us. Trey, how's it going, man? Welcome to the show, my friend.
It's good to be hanging out tonight.
You look good. I like the hair.
It's good to be with you, man. Didn't do much with it. It looks a bit like yours, actually.
You have better hair than I do.
By the way, I realized I don't have my highlight in hand. I might have to ask for that during this broadcast.
We need to get some bottle service. So, I told you the other day. So I told you the other day that I needed to find some pretty good bourbon for you because you were a special guest and I was excited to have you. And so, no joke, I was going into Publix Friday night, I guess it was, and I ran next door to the liquor store, Publix Liquors, which I never go into. And I walk over into the bourbon section, and this is normally like a $35 bourbon, and they had it for $27, and it's actually outstanding.
Nice.
And so I thought this is perfect for you.
Four Roses is phenomenal.
It's brilliant, and the small batch is actually, so if you like the yellow label or the yellow ribbon, the small batch is actually more complex. It's aged longer, a little more blends to it, so it's good stuff, man.
I'll have to try that. I am a
so
bourbon fan.
You've been traveling.
Traveling?
You've been traveling a lot.
You mean like in my life in general, or during this friggin' pandemic? I've been shut down. I mean, I was traveling quite a bit. I was in New York City.
Yeah.
Back right now. Can you hear me? All right, good.
Yeah.
I was traveling to New York City almost once a week, or once a month. And I did. Look, I love to travel. There's our girl Gloriosa. I was traveling to New York, and the last time I went there was Alex is such good people, and she's such a phenomenal journalist. And yeah, but. Now, I mean, we've all been not on lockdown, but here in Florida compared to the other states. But I certainly have not been traveling, doing consulting anywhere in the U.S. much at all.
Where's your favorite place to go?
In the world?
Yeah.
So, okay, you got to understand, man, I'm a travel freak. Like I have backpacked, living off $10 a day in Colombia, Cambodia, Mexico. I would say that, I mean, if you're going to ask me my favorite song, I'm going to give you a rambling answer of how I decide each one. Favorite food place, Thailand. The culinary experience there is amazing. Favorite people in the whole world, Colombia. They're the best. They're the most friendly.
Yeah.
Cities in the U.S., probably New Orleans, New York. And they're both radically different. I love the energy of New York City. I spent a lot of time there over the last few years. And New Orleans, there's just nothing friggin' like it. And first of all, you were born and raised here in Florida, right? You're a South Florida boy. How long have you been in Tallahassee?
Born and raised Broward County till 7th grade, I believe. And then we moved to Indiana. And so then I lived in Indiana through high school, college experience.
Seventh grade. So you're like, I don't know, 11 years old. How the hell did you adapt to the friggin'? I'm an Ohio boy, Cincinnati, Ohio. Where in Indiana are you?
Right. Where in Anderson, and then Indianapolis.
Dude, how did your Florida cracker ass end up adapting to?
It sucked. Yeah, I mean, my family, this is funny, and this is why I love talking to you, because I have no idea where the conversation is going to go. So my family's actually from Indiana. My mom is born and raised in Indiana. My family goes back to northern Indiana from like the Civil War, right? So my mom's family does. And so I had been to Indiana, but she's from the South Bend area. And so I had been up there before. And then, as I recall, and my mom's probably watching, so hi, Mom. I'm probably going to get a text.
Hey, Mom.
If I don't tell the story right. But what I remember was one day they came home and basically were like, we're moving to Indiana. And I was like, okay. And so that's what we did. And it was massive culture shock, dude. Like, so I'm from Broward County. I'm from Lauderhill, Margate, kind of in that area, if you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, it's kind of the hood. And my neighbors were all Jamaican and Haitian and Cuban, and then I went
you go to Indiana, super diverse area. I mean, you're pretty friggin' white me looking.
Yes,
I'm a little darker because I am part Lebanese and I live further south than you in Tallahassee.
Yes,
but
yes.
geez, you went to where I grew up. I mean, I grew up in the suburbs of Cincinnati, Ohio, which were
hour and a half away,
white as you could get.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting. You juxtaposed me. I left Cincinnati at 18 and moved to downtown Chicago.
Right.
Where I was like, oh my God, this is so awesome. I love it. Soaking up the cultures.
Yeah.
You went from Jamaican, Haitian, you're eating griot and patties and good food with and then you moved to Indiana where by the way, foreign food is Italian. that is foreign.
Yeah. And 50-cent burrito night. It was crazy, man. It was total. It's funny. I don't think about this a lot, so I can tell you're a good journalist because it was something that my classmates. So when I lived in Indiana, this was the heyday of GM manufacturing, right? So the town Anderson that we lived
Cincinnati
in had
too. I mean, right next door where I was.
That whole
everybody worked.
Yep. So there were 17 GM plants in Anderson, Indiana when I was there. So you're talking mid 80s, right? And so everybody was blue collar. They were all UAW. And that's not the world that I come from, right? I mean, South Florida, as you know, is totally different. And
I love it. I love South Florida as a Spanish speaking gringo that loves to soak up cultures. You pop my ass into Lauderdale or Miami, and I feel at home now. But yes, so I totally understand. I mean, you're going from
and I was 12.
A radically different area,
and I was 12. And it was kind of I have no idea what the hell just happened to me. And then when in high school, we moved to Indianapolis, and I went to high school in Indianapolis, and then college, and then moved away, came back to Indiana.
Where'd you go to? By the way, Indianapolis. Not quite as white, but still pretty friggin' white.
We used to call it Naptown, which was, Nap.
Yeah. Of course.
And that's where I got started politically, ironically. And that's kind of where in Indianapolis, and I was the only white Democrat. I grew up as a Democratic household. And I was the only white Democrat in the city of Indianapolis, literally the only white Democrat. And at that time, Marion County, which is Indianapolis, was a Republican stronghold. Basically it was like 95% Republican. And so I got my start working for Black Democrats, working on you're from the Midwest, working on township races and local stuff.
Townships. I've not heard that word since 90 something.
Right. I know. I try to explain to people you have a county, and in your county you have 8 individual governments in your county, and people are oh, what the hell? Yeah, it's crazy. But working on those races, those township trustees and those different races, which are it's 2,500 votes, and it's your neighbors and whatever. That's how I got my start, and going door to door in the hood for Black Democrats, running for township races. And that was probably another culture shock.
Yeah.
And then I left, traveled around a little bit, lived in a couple different places, and then came back to Indianapolis in 97, I think, something like that. And then met my wife, who was a native Hoosier, and we got married. And then at some point, 98, 99, 2000, got converted to the GOP, where I was a libertarian for a while, but we're not going to talk about that tonight. We don't have enough bourbon.
But I mean, I think naturally if libertarianism is in your DNA, which when I moved to Chicago at 18 years old, again, going from honky ass Cincinnati, Ohio, moving into Chicago, where I began to become a political animal as well.
Right.
I really started to develop my libertarian beliefs And I still today, as jaded as I am of both parties and both institutions, I just think that my DNA naturally lands with the Republican Party with pretty libertarian beliefs.
Yeah, we've talked about this. I mean, we may get into that a little bit more, but I mean, I think I was raised, my parents were sort of more hippie type. Hi, Mom. And so I sort of grew up as, even though we were Democrats, it was sort of that healthy skepticism of government. It wasn't, the squad and everybody gets a free check and yada, yada. So I think and my dad, of course, is the Vietnam generation, right? So my dad, Nixon and Vietnam and all that bullshit.
Sure.
I grew up with that.
What you've just illustrated to me is what I always try to be empathetic, sympathetic, understand where people come from. I want to know what you believe in and why, and have an understanding. One of my biggest struggles right now is the current Democratic Party do exactly what you just listed, which is skepticism. Mm-hmm. I think it's in the American DNA to have what I call a healthy distrust of government.
I agree.
I don't, that is as American as you can get. And I think it's a good thing. When you look at how corrupt of an entity it is, whether we're talking Democrats or Republicans. I mean, Jesus, just look at what the hell's happened in the last few days. A $1.9 trillion spending bill, which sends billions with of dollars to all sorts of bullshit, whether we're talking about the arts or infrastructure that really probably should have been handled by state governments, local governments, to them cutting you a $1,400 check of back to you. This is 1.9 trillion. To me, when you look at the last 20 years of Republicans talking shit about debt and deficits, and then as soon as they take over with Trump and just like with George W. Bush, the debt ceiling under George W. was raised as easy as it was to name a post office in friggin' Paducah, Kentucky. Obama gets in. Oh, by the way, I should know, when Obama was senator under W., he had some pretty moving floor speeches about debt is a signal of lack of leadership and horrible. Republicans take back control, and then the debt goes through the roof. To me, government is not inherently a corrupt entity. I think that government can and does some really good things in terms of the fabric of our society. But to wrap this little tirade up to what you just said, man, is that the Democrats of the past, when you look at the 1960s hippie movement of I'm not going to your war, and you go into the 70s of, by the way, Black Power, Black Panthers rising up saying this government doesn't represent me, and beyond, even to hip hop of the 1980s, Fight the Power, 1990s, Rage Against the Machine. This was all blowback to a corrupt government. And nowadays, I don't get this Democratic Party. Now it is, I want them to run my healthcare, my education. I want them to cut me checks. I don't understand it. And that is, to me, one of my biggest political frustrations today.
Yeah. No, I think those are excellent points. The healthy skepticism of government. But don't you think that's a generational thing, though? I mean, I feel like the younger, I remember being, so I have a 16-year-old son. I remember being 16 and, you're taking high school government, and that's kind of when I started volunteering on campaigns and sort of in that age. I feel like now 16 through 20 don't really have that same skepticism. And maybe it's because they didn't learn from their parents like you and I learned from our parents. Does that make sense?
Yeah, maybe. But again, our parents, my parents were not very political. They were Republican, suburban Cincinnati. But I don't know. I mean, so like me growing up, I was not a rebel, but like I was undoubtedly a huge fan of old school hip hop. And I remember even at like 11, 12 years old, listening to, for example, Public Enemy. I brought up Fight the Power and or, you know what, let me give you an example maybe that you're more familiar with, if you know hip hop, even just a tiny bit. NWA. Dude,
I'm older than you, so you know.
So NWA comes, but for me, like when I heard "Fuck the Police," it wasn't like, of course, there's that like, you know, young preteen testosterone thing of like, yeah, this is so awesome, and I'm hearing the F word for the first time in my life. But for me, as I, even young age or as I got older, began to reflect on it, for me, it was like, as a suburban kid in Cincinnati, Ohio, where, you know, I'd finally trimmed lawns and everybody, you know, the firefighter neighbor. And I began to realize, like, holy shit, there's a world outside of that really reflected some of the libertarian in my life growing up of like, I don't, now I'm really extrapolating it way too far, but like, I don't really trust the state. And whether we're talking about, you know, a law enforcement apparatus to the government itself, you see and understand that corruption pervades, whether it is, again, to take this through generations of your parents and my parents of the 1960s of, I'm not going to go to your war. You're not going to ship me off to Vietnam.
Right.
Jacob, like, what the hell are we doing in Afghanistan 20 years later? What are we doing in Iraq? Have we really made a mark? Have we really made things better? Because we shed a lot of friggin' blood there. And again, I use all these examples to just go back to why I am super skeptical of Republicans and Democrats who want to everything, either take control of healthcare, take control of the economy, whether it's what they're doing right now through the stimulus or the Green New Deal, or foreign policy. And the foreign policy among both parties is friggin' shit.
All right, so
dude, you got me all wound up in it.
No, this is like, I mean, I want to tell people, like, this is like what our phone conversations are like, which is why I was really excited about this. So it's interesting what you just said, because as I wrote in this week's edition, I was actually on a sort of a super duper top secret Zoom call that we weren't supposed to talk about a couple weeks ago with, you know, Evan McMullen and all the different, you know, sort of.
What is that? What's he doing these days?
No. So and the idea was, there was these, you know, the joke that I sort of made was, you know, the Never Trump movement was created for a specific reason. And now the dog has now caught up to the car, and the dog doesn't know what to do. The dog is jumping on the car going, now what? And so I'm on this call, and there was former members of Congress, and there were, I mean, a lot of people you would know, probably guys you served with.
Sure.
And media figures and people that we were all supposed to not tell. So whoever the hell leaked it to Reuters, good job. Shocking. I'm not naming names. Like, I'm not going to do that because we were asked not to. But
sure,
there's this dichotomy right now, and maybe dichotomy is not the right word, but there's this debate about the future of the Republican Party. I know you and I have sort of differing opinions on this, which is why this is going to be fun. The future of the Republican Party versus, you know, you got all these people who think it's going to be a great idea to go start a third party or go become libertarians or whatever, right? Okay.
Oh, your comment was a liberty. You had a great line, 2 lines in there. Here's who libertarians have elected in the last 50 years. It was like
that was my whole point.
Random ass state senator and some random ass and dog catcher. There was someone, a libertarian elected dog catcher in Arkansas.
Well, and they always get elected to like these nonpartisan things, you know, like the Water Fish and Wildlife Board, and I'm a libertarian elected, and you're like, no, not really, dude. So the only real contribution I made to the entire discussion, there was a general discussion, and then we had breakout groups, and the only contribution I really made was, there's a reason why they have existed for 50 years and gotten fuck all done. Like nothing. Like there's a reason why, okay? Part of it's because they just want to smoke pot all day. Okay, let's just be honest with you. All right. That's if you've ever been to a Libertarian Party function, like the contact high is amazing. Okay. It really is. I'm not even joking. And the second thing is that they're notorious, and I made this joke actually on this call, where the Libertarian Party is notorious for having meetings to discuss whether they should have more meetings. Like that's kind of what they do. Like, let's get together and talk about the next meeting we're going to have. You're like, really? And thirdly, and you know this better than I do probably, is the game to some extent is rigged. I mean, the game is designed.
Of course it is.
It's designed for two parties. Would I love a parliamentary type system? I absolutely would. If we were starting over again, would I love this idea where you had like 9 parties in Congress and you're allocating power based on, yeah, I mean, it'd be phenomenal. But I also would like to be much better looking than I am. It's just not going to happen, right? You play the hand that you're dealt, right? These are the cards I have. I look the way I look. It's not going to get any better. Our system is the way that it is. And this idea that you're going to go off on your own and keep in mind, now you got me fired up, keep in mind, this is a chat that was moderated by a guy who tried to run for president as an independent and got the door slammed in his face. What should have been kind of like the clue, like, hey, y'all, maybe this isn't the way to go. Mike Bloomberg spent $17 billion or whatever the hell it was he spent, and, you know, couldn't get shit done. And he had an unlimited budget. So back to my original point, if I had an original point, which was, so we basically got 2 paths. I mean, I feel like politics is cyclical, right? Like this idea that a political party, I've argued for years that a political party is just an organization to get somebody elected. Like that's all it does. It's an apparatus to get somebody elected. And you have 2, and I keep moving, and I'm sorry, I can't do the backwards thing.
No, I'm with you.
Each party is always going to represent a certain segment of the population, but it doesn't mean that they don't flip flop. You know, and you know this better than I do. You're a student of history. You know, the Republican Party historically isn't always the conservative party. The Democratic Party isn't always the liberal party. They just have staked out different positions over the years. And that's how it's evolved. And what we've done in the last 50 years or so is forced each party to lock in a certain segment. So now Democrats are always historically going to be to the left. Republicans are historically always going to be to the right. And that's even though you could argue that, you know, a lot of Democrats are more conservative than some Republicans. And you could argue that Donald Trump was actually really a moderate, but that's probably a different conversation for another day. So I guess from you, there was a question or a point 10 minutes ago in this, and that is, where do we go from here? So like you and I have talked about this off air. I know you voted for Trump. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I've actually never said who I voted for, and I've never.
Okay.
And no, even privately with you. And I will tell you that I voted Democrat before.
I know that.
I've never shared. Okay. But look, I am as skeptical of a lot of what Trump did, and if you look at all of, so far as hated as the Lincoln Project is, as hated as people like Rick Wilson are, all of the things that they said have kind of fucking happened.
For sure.
Post Trump. I do think that there are some silver linings to look at with Trump in the way that he, as abhorrent some of his communication would be, but with the way that he still, I mean, the New York Times just had this article today of why Latinos voted for Trump. I think some of it was condescending as hell. And in fact, you being from South Florida, I think one of the most condescending things that I saw written in the New York Times and Washington Post and others about South Florida Latinos was,
I know what you're
right
going to
after
say.
the election, where they said, "Oh, they bought into the socialism. All of these idiots Latinos who are from Cuba and Venezuela. They should be the friggin' experts. If you are a journalist and you are looking into why, by the way, it was always predicted that, wow, they voted for Obama in big numbers. Now they're going to keep voting for Democrats, but they didn't. If you were to really reflect on that as a journalist, what you should be saying is, I want to go to these people who've come from generations of escaping Fidel Castro, escaping Hugo Chavez, and these are experts that I should be listening to about why they changed from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party, or why they stuck with Republicans. But so that aside, I do think that there are a few, maybe small, but silver linings to look at with the Trump presidency and the Republican Party moving forward as more of, I hate to use this term, but a blue collar party. I think if I were to just neutrally assess it without my partisan hat of Democrats who are so goddamn caught up in Dr. Seuss and Mr. Potato Head and all these cultural things that they end up applying to politics. Why are you involved in these dumbass culture wars? And like Donald Trump, that really took advantage of that. With regards to a third party, the reality is this, and I lived in Europe, I've traveled, I understand some of the benefits of a parliament. I also understand it. I lived in Italy for a year, of how absolutely functional it is when you've got 7 different parties running for 7 different things. The United States culturally, and as you really pointed out earlier, that how the game is just set up for 2 parties, culturally and politically, we're a 2-party system, and that's it. I just don't see that changing anytime soon. While we can say oftentimes like, shit, I got to vote for the lesser of 2 evils, the reality is the United States has kicked a lot of ass, because we are 2 parties that you have either throughout even modern history where one party takes over and says, we're doing this, or there's some compromise, we're doing this. And the reality is that with the 2-party system, the United States has accomplished a hell of a lot, done a lot of great things, and not been, as many European countries are, just stuck in this kind of like, oh my God, now we got to figure it out. We all have to sit around, smoke cigarettes, drink little coffees, and figure out what the hell we're going to do.
Oh, that's not a bad life. I mean, minus the smoking and cigarettes, that's actually not a bad life. Okay, so we have a viewer question actually via text. So let's get in a little bit of policy. Then there's a couple of things that I want to talk to you about. So healthcare. In this country, sorry, Mom, healthcare in this country is fucked up.
And both parties have destroyed it.
Oh yeah, and so like I was telling somebody this the other day. So for my son's basketball physical this year, because of his size, my son is 6'6", and so because of his size and his
by the way,
whatever,
you're somewhere in one of your bios. It's like tall AF. How tall are you?
I'm 6'5".
Damn. And so to be heightist for a second, that would be like an equivalent of racist, and to ask a soft heightist, a soft racist. When you moved to Indiana, did you play basketball like every other Hoosier?
So I grew up in South Florida in the 70s and 80s when there wasn't any basketball. And
sure.
I played baseball and I swam and I played soccer. And so when I got to Indiana, this is actually funny. I can remember gym class, like 7th grade, like first week of gym class. You know, this is old school gym class, like climbing the rope and all that. You know, the teacher staring up your shorts, and
shorts climbing up your crotch.
Yeah. and we played basketball. Like they just like rolled the basketball out, and I'm kind of like I wanted to kick it, right? Like I'm kind of like, I don't know what the hell we're doing here. But I ended up being halfway decent at basketball. But my son, fortunately, is actually very good at basketball. and
Nice.
which is good because he doesn't know that how little we have saved for his college. So we're, really
Praying, please. I need that scholarship.
keep shooting, buddy. Keep shooting.
Yeah.
But
Get your
so I
ass
had to take
outside.
him.
You keep working.
I don't care if
Shut
it's
up.
snowing. Shut up. You're not hungry. You don't need to eat.
Water.
So for his basketball physical, because of his size and his, his hands and his build and whatever, they wanted to do a echocardiogram, a heart screening for him, right? So you have to go to a pediatric cardiologist, which apparently is the thing. And I don't mean to be dismissive, but so you go there and the nurse does the echocardiogram, which of course is just a sonogram of your heart. Like it's nothing complicated. It's literally just a sonogram of your heart. And the nurse does it. And then the doctor comes in and goes, yeah, he looks good. Signs it, right? So last week we get the bill. My wife and I get the bill from the insurance company. I could be off slightly, but it was in the neighborhood of like $4,500. We were there a half an hour. He got a sonogram of his heart. It was like $3,000 for the sonogram, like $1,000 for the consult, and like $600 miscellaneous bullshit. Like it literally was something ridiculous. And I'm kind of like, look, I'm a free market mofo, right? Like I adore the free market. I'm as capitalist as fuck. Sorry, Mom. Like I just really am. But this idea that this doctor who did nothing but tell my son and I stories of how they invented Gatorade while he was at University of Florida Medical School, so I'll tell you how old he was, made $3,000 for reading a sonogram of my son's heart boggles my mind. It boggles my mind. And listen, I get it. He went to med school for 35 years. Like he's got 50 years of experience. Like I get all that. Like, and I mean no disrespect to doctors. I really don't. But honestly, dude, somebody who is, and we're not affluent by any stretch, but somebody who maybe is working 2 jobs and, has got 5 kids to feed and this and this and this and this, they're not taking their kid in to get the heart screen for $4,600, right? Like, so this idea,
if you're loaded, but you start throwing out like, how did we even arrive to that's acceptable to begin with, where we don't have like any other product that we purchase in America,
right?
Of like, I'm going to go here and it's going to cost this. I'm going to go there and it's going to cost that. And then your insurance company just hits you blindly with it. All of it is terrible. The largest picture question that I would ask is, do we blow it all up and hand it to the government?
So here's my argument. Not to cut you off. Go ahead. You're going to say something.
No, please.
No. So I sort of joke with people, when I got started in this business, I was so shitty at running campaigns that I actually had to have a day job because I couldn't get a staff job because I never got anybody elected because I sucked at running campaigns. And so one of the things that I did was I actually worked with a company that built and designed small group health plans for, 100 and under employee companies. And I literally can remember going into, and I think my wife might be watching, so she can remember this. And if she's not, we're going to have a conversation. Looking at, you would get like a small machine shop, right? Like I can actually remember one, and it was like 46 employees. And like, because you're rebidding this every single year. I don't think people understand that. Like, why is my health premium go? Well, because it's actually rebid literally every single year. I know I'm scooting over. Sorry, guys.
Which by the way, that rebidding process depends on how the government decides to change the rules that year.
Exactly.
And the government changes it literally every session that you as a congressman having voted on this. It's like, well, now they want to, do payments, they want to schedule this. And which again is my skepticism of the government handling, because they've done a shit job of it. But sorry, go ahead. Go back.
No, you're fine. You're right, because that was the first part of it, and the second part of it was you would do a census of all of the employees, and you would get health conditions, right? So I can remember this company. I literally can vividly remember sitting in this office with this guy, And actually, this company was it was a pallet. I didn't even know this existed. It was a pallet repurposer. So like the wooden pallets that they use for shipping and whatever,
Sure.
he would take those and break them down and then repurpose them into other things. It was very interesting. And he had something like 50 employees, and they were forklift drivers and guys that unloaded the trucks and guys that operated the equipment and whatever. And I will never forget his secretary was pregnant. One of the like his bookkeeper or something had twins the previous year, and it was a complicated birth. 2 guys had cancer that year. Third guy's wife, who of course was on the plan, had like a transplant or some nonsense, right? So out of 50 people, there was something like $500,000 or something in unanticipated extra expenses. They budget, the insurance company goes in and say, oh, we think your group is going to cost us $100,000 this year, right? I mean, I'm simplifying this, but we're going to spread that over your 50 employees. You pay this, they pay this, we're going to mark on our 20% for admin and profit and whatever. That's oversimplifying, but that's sort of how it works. So then now you have a group like that has, if they were budgeting $100,000 for expenses, they had another $500,000 on top of that. So the insurance company ate $500,000 on top of what they were budgeting or expecting for the year. And so they got to get that money back. Mm-hmm. And so I literally remember sitting with this guy and basically building out his bid and his packet. And it was something like his premiums basically tripled. And it was,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I literally can remember this and sitting there and looking at him and him looking at me like, what am I going to do? Like, I mean, he maybe made $80,000 a year. You know what I'm saying? Like, this isn't Jeff Bezos, right? And he was like, oh yeah, so I'm basically going to work for free next year. So we as conservatives, because I am still a conservative, I feel like I'm more conservative than I was, quite honestly. We as conservatives have kind of shit the bed on this argument because we are so paranoid about alienating, the health industry special interest groups, right? And you know this better than I do, and being seen as less than pure free market, the heritages and all these, these groups that are like, oh, free market, free market, free market. That nobody's willing to sit down and say, okay, what if we took everybody in America? So right now we provide healthcare for, I don't know how many millions of people it is on Social Security. I don't have the ability to keep track of that. But we provide some basic semblance of Medicare, excuse me. We provide some basic level of subsistence healthcare for them. We have Medicaid, which is pretty much the same thing, probably a little more stripped out in a lot of ways. And then the rest of us in the middle are fending for ourselves. So we're shopping, or we're trying to get a job that has good health benefits, sure, or staying at a job that maybe sucks or doesn't have promotion opportunities because,
which by the way, in itself, why do you have to stay in a shitty marriage or crappy job to even have that health insurance? Right. I mean, the way that the entire, so by the way, while we're sitting here talking, a mutual friend of ours is texting me about what I was complaining about how it's market protections. And market protections are a huge fault of the Republican Party. Well, both parties. Look, whether you're talking immigration, my opinion is immigration and healthcare in this country are two of the biggest screw-ups by both parties for decades. Whether we're talking legal or illegal immigration and the way that it's been handled, or the inhumane ways that people just live in this country illegally for decades, to healthcare, the way the protections have been set. Again, whether we're talking about, like, why can't you just simply go in and say, I need this for my son, I'm going to go shop it. I'm going to look at package A, B, C, and D, and then go to my health insurance company and say, you tell me, what the hell do you want? None of it makes sense. I mean, it is so convoluted and screwed up that it is no wonder that a lot of people, including Republicans, like myself at times, have thrown up my hands and been like, just give it all to the government. Just let me. But of course, reality kicks in about how government does not run things very well. Look at our school system.
Agreed.
And to just say, give it all to the government, let's have single payer healthcare. I mean, look at what's happening in the UK right now, where they have massive doctor shortages. They are telling people if you're a smoker or of an advanced stage, you're probably not going to get what you want. I mean, because the reality is that unlike the private markets, where you can enter into a contract and you have the judicial system to be able to sue for what's not been fulfilled, you go to the government and they tell you, sorry, we understand or we know that you smoke a pack a day. We're not giving you this transplant. We're not giving you a knee or shoulder or whatever it is, because that is what the United Kingdom is doing right now, today, as we speak. There's no repercussion. There is no holding them accountable. You can't say, well, wait a second, I'm a taxpayer here. I'm a Brit. There's no holding them accountable. So look, this is one of those issues that for decades, free market reforms. We're taking lobbyist money and not implementing free market reforms, not introducing more competition. And then the Democrats who are like, we just need single payer. And you know what? Either they are already super wealthy and have great insurance that they can get the private market, or have the government insurance. It's all a horrible situation. And I have no answers except for observations to say, you look at every president that gets in, they issue executive orders. In fact, a very little known thing that they did in that 1.9 stimulus bill, COVID relief, which is not about COVID or relief, but I throw that aside, is there's a huge injection actually for Obamacare in there that the Democrats also put in money for. Is it good? Is it bad? It's one of those things like immigration that just gets freaking punted from one side to another. And who gets absolutely screwed? It's us, the American people. And it's horrible. Jesus.
So on that note, all right.
I should go grab a highlight out of my fridge.
You should go grab one. Go grab one while I pour here. We'll bounce you for a second.
How much time do we have? How long do you go here?
We can go as long as you want, dude.
Well then, all right. I'll be right back.
Go ahead, brother. Go.
All right. Okay.
Hold on one second, guys. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Trey's background, I didn't do a great introduction for him. He's been a journalist, he's been an actor, he's been a comedian. He was a member of Congress, basically from Fort Myers. And now has a talk show host, has a talk show down in Fort Myers, Naples area. Has been an author, has written 3 or 4 books. And if you watched this is the other funny thing, if you watched the National Geographic channel special show, The Right Stuff, the drama, Trey actually was a journalist on the show, actually played a journalist. I think it was the 6th or 7th episode of the season. And they were having the press conference with all the Mercury astronauts, whatever. You actually see Trey in the back of the room, and he asks a couple of questions of the guys, which is pretty funny. And I had forgotten, this is funny, I had forgotten that he was on the show. And we were watching it as a family. Here's Trey. So we were watching it as a family. I think I texted you. We were watching The Right Stuff, and I had forgotten that you were on it. Cheers, brother.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I had forgotten. I mean, you had said it, and then I had forgotten. And then we were watching the episode that you were at the press conference. And I was like, holy shit, that's Trey. I think I texted you. I'm like, dude, I'm watching you on Nat Geo, whatever. I did a poor job of introducing you, so I was giving a little introduction of you while you were out grabbing your beer, and was telling people that you were on the
So
Cheeto
yeah,
show. How did that come about?
just one of the random things. So it's just over the last. So when I was in Chicago, I did some improv comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Place called Second City, which is famous for drafting Saturday Night Live characters out of. So like Belushi studied there, Farley studied there, Mike Myers, all really big time SNL stars studied at Second City, in Chicago. And I took like improv comedy classes there. I mean, I was by no means a main player on the stage or anything. But over the last few years, I just started auditioning for various roles. So I had I used to be a TV news anchor. I've been a TV news anchor, reporter. I was the idiot standing in the hurricanes here for many years, covering those. But I had a recurring role as an anchor in a show on a Sony-owned app called Crackle. It's like a poor man's Netflix. I had a recurring role on that, which was cool. I've done what else? I played a detective from 1979 on the Discovery Channel, and so I've just done these random acting gigs here and there, which they're. So that was shot in Universal in Orlando. I didn't even know. I'm shooting that on their back lot. The rides and stuff are going on. The Hulk is blasting and every other ride at Universal, and we shot that right there at their sound stages. It was awesome.
So, do you have your SAG card?
No, I'm eligible, but it's not in my best interest to get it.
Gotcha.
It's you got to pay a ridiculous amount of money.
It's like a percentage of your earnings or something, right?
They do. There are some benefits, but here in Florida, you can do SAG gigs without being SAG, and so I think I had to send them. God, it was a ridiculous amount of money to be in SAG, but yeah. So in most of my stuff that I've done is where you grew up. I shot the Discovery gig that I did. I played like this. It's so ridiculous and dumb, but it was cool. I played a detective from 1979, and the name of the show was "The Truth Is Stranger Than Florida." Was the name of the show on Discovery, and we shot it in Lauderdale and Miami, and it was cool. It was a good experience, and I enjoy acting here and there. It just is something different that I do occasionally.
So how'd you get down to Fort Myers?
So I first moved to Naples. So I was I worked. So I studied in Chicago. I interned at CNN in Atlanta, and that was my intro to TV news. And I left there back to Chicago. I moved to Houston, Texas. Worked at the CBS affiliate behind the scenes there, and put together a reel, like a fake, stories and newscasts where I'd appear on camera. And I got a job here in Southwest Florida in the Fort Myers Naples market, and they hired me to be a Naples reporter. So I was Collier County based, right across from Broward, and I covered everything. I was a general assignment reporter. I, at that time, spoke Spanish well then. And so I'd cover all of the area, all sorts of stories, everything from general assignment news to like boring ass county commission meetings. A lot of the Immokalee farm worker stuff, huge issues going on with immigration, visas, fair wages. And then I left. I started up I bought a very small fledgling newspaper. I sold it, which was awesome, to Scripps, a big media corporation in Cincinnati. And I traveled all over. I went back into anchoring the news, and I anchored for a few years. I left again because I was just bored of it. I was bored of reading the friggin' teleprompter. And I then got into politics, and holy shit, that was a wild ride.
Well, that was a good segue.
Yeah, I was. So if there's anyone still tuned in to you and I ranting over bourbon and beer right now,
Right.
yeah, I was a TV news anchor reporter. I went to radio. I had a radio show, Conservative Talk, and I decided to run for Congress. And it was something that I had always wanted to do. I'd always wanted to serve the country in some way, but the military, it just, throughout all of my life, it never made sense.
Right.
Like I just, when I was 18, no, I went to school, and as I got older, I considered actually the closest thing I came to was after 9/11. Again, as someone who loves foreign cultures and speaks a few languages, I considered the CIA. But again, it was just something that I continued reporting and went down my professional path. But the time came when I decided to run for the United States Congress, and I was told, and you having worked in government, knowing government, I was told by like local mayors, like, "Oh, you want to run for something? You should run for planning board. You can decide. You can decide what colors buildings will be painted. What sweat." Yeah. So I ran for Congress, and I won. I was an underdog. I ran against some big time establishment people who had dads who worked for the W. Bush administration. I worked against people who were state senators or members of the House, and I won. I built a coalition of younger people. I mean, this is years ago now. Jesus, I'm old. And I'm older than you. It was. What are you, 46?
I am.
Yeah. Gee, what am I? I don't even know. I'm at 44. But I ran and I won, and I went to Washington. I lost my mind. I went nuts. And if there's anybody, tuning in that doesn't know my story, I ended up resigning. I went, and I had run a campaign that was the most intense thing I'd ever done in my whole life. It was.
I don't think people really understand how that goes. Yeah, I don't think people understand the 18 hours a day for like a year, and like no days off, and like going from event to event, and you're on the phone and you're eating fast food 5 times a day, and you're like, I don't think people really understand how that goes. So I'm with you. I get you on that one.
I was, even during the campaign, I was every night out. You're out drinking, you're out you're eating shit food all day long. And I had a newborn baby. I mean, he was months old. And I ran, and I gave everything. I as I look back at it now, reflect in a, as while I might not be the most mature dude and can bust out some 15-year-old fart jokes, as a mature man now, looking back, I mean, I was an insane person who had no comprehension of balancing anything. And I ran, and I won. And then I was in Washington, D.C., without my newborn son, without my wife, 4 days a week. And I loved it. Like I never did anything. I was never like, I look at these people like Cuomo or even some of these other representatives, even post my time, that were out there and they were abusing taxpayer dollars or sexually harassing people. My thing, I love to go out. I love people. I love to go out and just soak up the nightlife, soak up the city. Because I had lived in Chicago, Houston, Atlanta, and I was in friggin' Fort Myers, Naples, Florida, a little bit more tame. And I get back into the city of Washington, D.C., and it was great. It was awesome. But I just overindulged in everything. I just would be out every single night, every event that there was, or like, Kevin McCarthy, the then majority of the, hey man, come on out. We're gonna go to Ruth's Chris and have some steaks and martinis. And I'm
and
like,
by the way, you're not paying for anything. So it's not like you got to worry about. You're like, you're not paying for anything. Every party in town is available to you. Everybody, like I try to explain this to people, like when you get elected, and it doesn't end. Like literally within a couple of weeks, you're in DC. You're doing your org meetings. You're hiring staff. You know, I don't know if you did the Harvard seminar or not, but that's always another thing that pops up. There's always these things that there's like no break. And then first week of January, you're in DC. And then it's like, holy shit, I'm a congressman. Like,
yeah. And you were sworn in.
Yeah.
And it was just nonstop. So as crazy as I went at night, like I'd be out till not crazy late, not like my early 20s late, but I'd go out until I would go hang out with people off of the hill. So where shit got out of control is I'd be like, 5 o'clock rolls around and I go have beers with staff.
Right.
And then I go to an event that's at 6 o'clock. And then I go to a dinner that is at 7 o'clock.
Right. And there's drinks
everywhere.
And
then maybe a wrap up event at 8 o'clock. And then I'd go out and I'd be out till midnight, 1 a.m. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. and the schedule is insane. I would have my schedule mapped out starting at, roughly 8 a.m. At some points in the day to 15-minute interviews all in a row. Boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
Wait, break for committee. Now go to this committee. Now that committee. Now you got to vote. Now you're meeting. I loved it. I really, really enjoyed the meeting with people. And that includes lobbyists. Lobbyists have this, horrible reputation of being terrible people. The reality is lobbyists only exist because government creates roles for them. Government says, we're going to give tax breaks to these people. There's a lobbyist asking for you to keep the tax break. We're going to create subsidies for these people. Well, there's a lobbyist asking for more subsidies. So I enjoyed the legal aspects of meeting with lobbyists. I love the constituents of whether it was foreign affairs. I served on the Foreign Affairs Committee. To transportation infrastructure, to taking care of the environment here in Southwest Florida, which have been shit on with, freshwater flows from Lake Okeechobee, all these things.
Yep.
I loved all of that, the action of the day-to-day. And the night stuff, I enjoyed way too much. And before you know it, man, it was total. I was nuts. I was an insane person every night. And it crept back up on me, and I lost what I had worked so hard for, but undoubtedly, life is way better now. I can't even imagine going back into that type of a lifestyle of traveling 5 days a week and being away from my kids. And it's just, again, to go back to some of those little things that I don't think people understand, of like these dumb things of like eating shit food every day, being on a plane, having to call people for money. It's grueling. It's terrible. It is what it is. It's part of the system and the way that our American political system is set up. But I couldn't go back to it ever again.
So you don't miss the buffet at the Capitol Hill Club?
No, what a terrible. Did they even do that with COVID?
I don't know.
Oh, God.
I remember the first time somebody, I had a member invite me. We were talking about his campaign, his reelection. I had a member invite me, and I think I had a cheeseburger. And I shit you not, to this day, it's worse than the high school cheeseburgers, And, there's the stacks of them under the heat lamp, and all these assholes are stuffing their face because they got to run their vote and whatever. And it just, all right. So let me ask you this. So, and there's a couple of things I'm going to touch on. And for people who don't know you, I think one of the things I respect about you the most is that you're incredibly honest and very open about everything. And I truly respect that. What's something about being a member of Congress that normal people like my parents or your parents or whatever just don't understand?
I think the bizarre level of worship from people in DC. And look, I wouldn't get my own coffee
Right.
in DC. I'd have, sir, can I go? I wouldn't let
Right.
them call me sir or Congress. Even something I wrote about in my book was like how I always bust this dude's balls about like, you always call me congressman, you always call me sir. Dude, I'm gonna punch you next time that you call me that. I'm Trey. I'm not your boss. In fact, but on a more serious note, one thing I always try to say is like, I don't want to be your boss until you make me have to be your boss. You know, I'm not your boss. We're working together. We're a team. Unless something terrible goes wrong on your side, I don't ever want to be your boss. So the weirdest thing is like a part of this is like I never got into like I never understood people who were so fascinated with celebrities. And having lived in Chicago, like I'd be out at I started kind of clubbing and going to bars a little earlier than I probably should have, which probably reflects a lot of my lifestyle. But I remember being at bars like with, I had a great fake ID and I'd be out and Dennis Rodman would be there. Jordan would be at the club, like the Smashing Pumpkins. Yeah. I never understood this adoration of celebrities, but you get to DC, dude, and it's creepy. It's like this weird way of how like not only young staffers, but staffers of all ages see that you've got that dumb little. It's weird and strange adoration that I never understood, and I always tried to push away. But that's one of the weird things about that city, about DC.
Yeah, it is, and it's actually something that happens here as well. It always cracks me up because legends here in Tallahassee make like shit money. They make like 30 grand. And, they bust their ass during session. They're working 100-hour weeks, and that mentality of the political celebrity actually happens even here, which I always find, maybe because I'm old and cynical and I've met hundreds and hundreds of politicians or whatever.
Sure.
But it's one of those things that I always find really fascinating, this adoration and especially because I have so many friends who are elected officials that like for me, I don't, they're first name basis and I respect the office. Now listen, I've got 10 or 12 close personal friends who are state legislators. And when I see them in the Capitol, I don't call them by their first name. It's Rep Jones or Rep Smith or whatever. But once we're off Capitol grounds, they ain't rep shit. They're Joe and they're Steve and they're Bob and whatever. Because
how many people even like outside of Tallahassee do you think that there's fucking 9 out of 10 people that could name the Speaker of the House?
No. Sometimes I gotta Google it, and I live here. And I work, and sometimes I gotta think, well, who the hell is it this time? Like,
totally. What year is it? Yeah, because I don't even know.
Right, and and because we have term limits here, and this is the thing. Okay, this is funny. So I remember when I got here, and got here during session, and which was like the worst time to ever come to Tallahassee, by the way. And it's kind of like being in DC with the cherry blossoms. Like during that time of year, it's like you just don't want to be there. It's ridiculous. And I remember getting a call from a friend who was like passing along, legislative gossip, and he was like, "Oh yeah, Joe Blow got elected speaker." I'm not gonna name any names, and I'm like, "I thought Jim Smith was speaker." And he's like, "No, speaker in 2026."
Yep.
I'm like,
they do it there.
What? It's like, yeah, he's a freshman. No, I shit you not. He's a freshman. He just got elected 6 months ago, and he's going to be speaker in 8 years.
Yep, and that's how they do it in Tallahassee.
And it's like,
it's a weird
no
thing.
wonder our politics are fucked up. Sorry, Mom.
Yeah. That is one thing about Tallahassee that I never understood. I don't know if they do that in other state legislatures, but that is something that I have learned over the years. My first foray into politics, I learned that fact that like they elect you when you're a freshman, and what that then turns into is this weird either popularity contest or something I'm not sure of. Actually, let me bring in some of my experience at the federal level and wonder about out loud with what happens in Tallahassee. So when you win your primary, if you are in a Republican district like this is here in Southwest Florida, you know, you're going to win. You're going to be the next congressman.
Yep.
All of a sudden, people are sending me money. What the fuck is going on? And
I could have used this 6 months ago.
Yeah, I know. But like, so you've got the things like Eric Cantor calls me. This is Eric Cantor, who used to be the majority leader while Boehner was speaker. Hey, Trey, what's going on, man? Hey, it's so nice to meet you. Blah, 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 blah. Hey, man. Hey, let me cut you $10,000.
Right. You're like, for what?
And I remember those calls. I remember exactly where I was in my little shitty condo with my wife, pacing around my tiny ass kitchen, like back and forth. And I'm like, what's this dude sending me $10,000 for?
Right.
And then I got Boehner calling me. I got McCarthy. I got everybody calling me. Hey, yeah, I'm going to cut you a check. And to make it more applicable to, again, that Tallahassee, I don't know if it's a race or whatever, but then freshmen who are in the same position as I am in South Carolina, North Carolina, who win Republican as president or other positions that you lock down as a freshman, and they're like, hey, I'm going to cut you my, and I was a political novice. I'd not been in the state house in Florida. I was not a state senator. Last thing I ran for was high school class president in the 90s. And so they're sending me this money. But then I realized, oh shit, all these people want something.
Exactly.
And and so with among the freshmen, to bring it back again to where I'm curious about that, maybe you might know, is these freshmen are sending me stuff because they wanted me to vote them into, again, the freshman class president, or what's the other one? I'm having a brain fart on who picks committee assignments. Having a brain fart on that name.
Oh yeah.
It's a position that you as a freshman, they take one freshman that gets into where you help Boehner and, well, at that time Boehner, or you help the Speaker of the House and all the powerful positions pick who will be on various committees. And then you get into DC, and before you're sworn in, you vote these people in. Well, if they've cut you some money, the idea is that they cut you some money and they want you to vote for them. So now I bring it back to you to ask, like, these people who are running as not even elected leaders, when they're running for speaker, are they giving a bunch of money to these other? Yeah, of course they are.
And they're using leadership hacks. They're mainly using leadership hacks to do it, which is, but yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. I remember, this is funny. I remember when I started working for Brian Mass in 2016, like the first week of our campaign, I had several friends who were members of Congress, who probably some guys that you knew, who started calling me, like literally on their first week on the job. And they're like, hey man, like you just said, hey man, we're sending you, I'm going to send you 2 max, me and my wife, and I'll cut you 5 from the pack. And then I got the Indiana Farmers Association is going to send you 10. And you're like, well, look, man, NRCC is going to fund, I'm going to get 5 from NRCC and I'm going to get probably another 5 from outside groups and whatever. Like, cool. But, I'm sure Brian, I didn't work for Brian in the primary. I'm sure Brian could have used the money in the primary.
Of course.
And so I must have gotten 15 of those calls, right? Yeah. Some of them were from people I knew. Some of them were people I had never met before, including then Congressman Doug Collins of Georgia. I'll tell you a funny Doug Collins story off the air. I'm not going to disrespect Doug on the air, but who's taller than me, by the way. So
I was sworn him with Doug.
I love Doug. He's a funny dude, but I'm not going to tell the story on the air. So the funny thing was that I had kind of really hadn't thought, you're in campaign mode and I'm running a schedule and we're going over the budget and I'm redoing vendor contracts and I'm having to hire, I had to hire like 4 staffers the first week, right? I had to hire a comms director and a political director, et cetera, et cetera. So I wasn't really thinking like, why the hell all these people are giving me money, right? And several of them were, like you said, there were people like in Indiana, I'm not going to name names, who had won Republican districts that were like, R+9 districts, and they didn't really have a real opponent. So they're giving us money. And I remember one day calling one of those guys and saying, why do you give a shit about our race? Like, I don't understand this. Like, this has nothing to do with you. And he's like, well, I'm going to send you a letter. Okay. We still do that? Okay. Send me a letter. So like a week later, I get like an actual letter in the mail. And it's this formal letter on campaign letterhead. And it was a copy for me and it was a copy for Brian. And it was asking for Brian's vote to be freshman class president. And I was like,
oh, wow.
This is the dumbest thing. Maybe not the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, but it's got to be in the top 5. And the irony is, so of the 5 or 6, I don't mind saying this on air, of the 5 or 6 freshmen who I know gave money to us, Brian didn't vote for any of them for freshman class president.
Oh, wow.
So what do you do,
Yeah. And he ran, he followed Patrick Murphy, right?
Correct. Yeah, it was an open seat.
Who ran Rubio.
Yeah, so Patrick decided, the story I used to tell people was, and I lived in the district, so the story I used to tell people was Patrick had built a ton of national support and platform because he was running against Alan West, which we're not going to talk about that tonight. And so, because life is not long enough to fucking tell Alan West stories, who I know very well, actually. So I have really bad ADD, as you could tell. So Patrick, when Marco was coming out for his first re-election, this was 16, right? I kept telling people, I started recruiting people in 2014 to run for that seat because I knew Patrick was going to leave because I knew, he had debts to, move on and all these different national platforms, and people had raised money for him. They're going to call in that favor by having him run against Marco. And so I had started recruiting in 2014, and I'm not going to name names of people I recruited, but there were some pretty prominent Florida, politicians who were in the area who, were interested in running. And then that seat became open, and then like 9 people were in the primary. Like, I shit you not. It was worse than yours. It was like 8, 9, 10 people running. Like 4 of them had never lived in a district, including Brian. And people were losing their mind. Of course, Patrick had never lived there either. Patrick just followed Alan. Like, we're not telling Alan West stories. But Patrick didn't even know where the damn district was. He had no idea. He's like, oh, Alan West moved to someplace on the map. I'm going to move someplace on the map too. And then he's like, holy shit, now I'm the congressman. He wasn't a bad congressman, by the way. Like, I'm not going to piss on Patrick. So there were like 9 people running in the primary, and Brian wins, and Brian won by like 9 points. And then suddenly, you're in DC like the following week, and you're meeting with NRCC, and you're meeting with leadership, and you're meeting with PACs, and you're doing fundraisers, and you're doing whatever. And it's kind of like what you said, like, it's this never ending, campaigns have gotten so big and so intrusive and so expansive. And so
it never stops.
It never stops. And I mean, I don't miss it. I mean, there are parts of it that I miss that I go, that was kind of fun. But then it's like, I like sleeping. Like, I like, I like having dinner with my family. Like, I like you said earlier.
Family,
So I don't miss any of that stuff at all. But so let me ask you this. So you corrected me the other day. I've been thinking about this a lot. I had said something to you about, hey, let's talk a little bit about addiction. And you correctly corrected me. I don't know if that's a term or not, but I'm going to say it. By pointing out that you weren't necessarily an addict. You were a guy who had a very active social life and got carried away. And so I do sort of want you to talk about that a little bit, because I know that opioid addiction is huge in this country, and people are struggling and things are going on. So explain to people,
especially with COVID.
Yeah, exactly. explain to people the difference, and then how you went from that guy to who you are now.
Very publicly, in my book and everything I went through, I asked, am I an alcoholic or an asshole? And what I came to was I was probably a little bit of both during my time. And I was living a lifestyle that was totally insane and crazy. And I would be out every night, and I would do dumb things like partake in extracurriculars that ended up getting me arrested. And it was, I mean, look, but I had done that. I had, in my 20s and 30s, I was in my 30s when I was elected to Congress. And I just was just living like an a-hole. I think that the way that you can, in life, if you're going to use the word addiction, I think that it is whether or not it takes away from things like whether it detracts from family, your job, your personal health, or you end up in illegal situations, then you have to question yourself. And I think that everybody in life goes through these types of things and it can be anything. It can be workaholic. It can be and have neck big and work out 24 healthy. That is a form of addiction. Food is a form of addiction. And I think that there are all these ways. So in looking at that, how do you treat it? What do you do? And after I blew my life up, I quit drinking for a year. Done. I had nothing. But I really didn't feel any different. I didn't I started working out again. But in my just assessing of all of it and living life I was situational. You throw me, like when I was at that time in my life, being thrown back into the city after just having done this insane campaign, having a baby and all of that, I would just go out like a madman at night. And it ended up, detracting from a whole lot. And then obviously it cost me everything. It cost me my professional life. After I resigned and everything, I took a year off. I quit drinking. I just wasn't working like an insane person. I began trying to put together what I would do next, what was next for me in life professionally, also really working on the personal stuff. And I just got to, and I don't know if this is just getting older or more mature. And I hate to use that word, but I just sort of became more at peace and learned a healthier lifestyle of balancing everything. I don't want to say that I balance everything because I still work like a freaking madman. I work a ton. I work many, many hours. I've always have irons in the fire. What am I going to do next? I mean, I have this radio show that I do during the week, but that doesn't pay all my bills. I have an LLC outside of it. So I'm always looking for projects I'm going to consult on. What am I going to do? But I just learned to kind of chill a little bit and not be such a complete madman because I was. I mean, like I said, I would get out of work on the Hill at 4 or 5, and after that, it was on in a really unhealthy way. And while I play tennis, I box, I try to work out. I was, oh my God. Again, to go back to what you were saying, Jacob, like I was eating shit, dude, or really good food. I was eating badass steaks. Eating steaks every night, Ruth's Chris. I mean, all this stuff. When you go to DC, I mean, it's crazy. Like you go to these events and it's like, here's a 5-star meal. Now we're going to go meet over at this place where you can have another one. It is, I just got way too caught up in it all. And and having left that lifestyle, man, I just have for years now, I've been in just a way better place, of a much more peaceful place, and not all the traveling and all that. Any traveling I do is on my choice, and it's great. I love it.
So let me ask you this: like when it all blew up, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to offend people, but I don't really give a shit. I think the thing that I find amazing, because I know DC and I know the lifestyle and I know that world, is that you weren't doing anything that, and you don't have to comment on this.
Sure.
You weren't doing anything that I know 50 other congressmen weren't also doing at the same time. Just going to be really honest with you. You don't have to comment. I'm not trying to get you to hook you. I'm not trying to get you to say anything, but I find it amazing that you're the guy who ends up being sort of the poster boy for a lifestyle that's actually relatively common on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, I don't know. Though I will tell you, I'm just being straight up here. I never ever partied, using extracurriculars in any way, shape, or form with any other member of Congress.
Okay.
My deal was, I loved getting off the Hill.
Right.
I loved what I was doing in terms of work, and I'd hang out with staff and I'd go to all those dinner parties or whatever. But when nighttime came, I got the fuck away from all of the fundraisers, this and that. And I had a set of friends who I got in trouble with, who I'd go out with at night. And I mean, again, in reflecting on some of the like funny ass bullshit I wrote in my book, like, yeah, there I am, into a club like Lil Jon turned down for what, and bottle service, and I'm like, what am I 20 at Club Space in Miami again? What is happening? But it was what I was doing too late at night, every night, many nights. And but to go to the other member, I think I'm a bit of an anomaly in the way that I was doing things, but I'm sure that happens a lot and exists a lot. But I just didn't hang out with a whole lot of members, after work hours. Jesus, I mean, who fucking wants to sit around and talk about debt to GDP ratio over bourbon with some idiot Republican or social justice warriors in the Democratic Party? Oh my God.
Oh my God.
That to me sounds terrible.
That's why I love you, man. You're like so honest. It's hilarious. So on a sort of more serious note, this is something I've kind of been wondering. On a human note, when it all blew up, like when this all went to shit, and I know it was sort of like this one cataclysmic, I can't speak, moment. Like, if you don't mind me asking you, what were those conversations like with friends and family back home? Like, what was it like to be like, look, shit blew up, I stepped in it. You don't have to get too personal. I'm just kind of curious about what that was like.
I'll answer you in something that I don't think I've ever said publicly. I called my dad and cried. I bawled. Yeah, I called other family members, and it was more business. Like, this is what happened, and I'm about to be on the news.
Right.
CNN, MSNBC, Fox, right. Al fucking Jazeera.
Right. Is that kind of how it was? It's like, hey, I'm about to be on the news. Let me tell you what happened.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
With my dad, it was a very emotional conversation. My wife, obviously, she was the first to know. There was the bust, and then I went through this whole period too of like, am I going to resign? And I tried to fight it, and I wasn't going to resign. Right. And I hung on.
I was gonna go there next. That's right.
Yeah, it just became so. Look, I've unnamed people over the years, really, really big news people that you watch every day on cable or networks, have undoubtedly been in contact with me over the years and been like, there's one in particular who has been like, I can't believe the way that we treated you. I can't believe the way that Republican leadership treated you.
Yeah.
And this is a big news anchor, or the way that we treated you. Like, you should have never, ever stepped down. and I still have members of Congress who are like, holy shit, look at, Donald
Right.
Trump has had 3
Right.
years and said this, or Democratic members have been busted for corruption. But for me,
Frickin' Alcee Hastings got
I'm really,
impeached for taking bribes. I mean, like, come on. And he's been in Congress for 20 years.
but for me, it was just, I just couldn't go on. Like, I'm trying to serve. I got media out of my office all the time. And and then media at home. Holy shit, they were brutal. Yeah. Showing up at my door. And I've got, again, my child at that time was 2 years old. And it just was too much. And I just finally, and by the way, leadership, sorry, now what you're doing is sparking a whole lot of things I've been talked about many, many years. The other thing that happened, and this is now what I'm about to do, I hope, is not only a little bit personal, but to give an insight to anybody interested in how Congress works behind the scenes. The ethics committee was drilling me. They're like, we need all this information. Where have you traveled? What have you done? Where have you been fundraising? And what it was that I would later assess with, I had to hire an attorney to just deal with ethics. Legal issues were done. My legal issue, I had a misdemeanor. And again, just to be clear about all that was it. A misdemeanor. Okay. You got popped for purchasing narcotics and you're done. You have 6 months of probation and you're good to go. But the ethics issue inside Congress was, oh my God, they wanted piles of paperwork. They wanted interviews with staff. They wanted everything. And what that was, as I would later realize, was the Republicans didn't really want to push me out publicly. There were a few who called for my resignation. Boehner did not. John Boehner was really, really good to me through it all. But they ended up utilizing ethics to just say, you got to get this guy out of here.
Right.
And it's crazy because you now look at like people who have committed really serious fucking felonies.
Right.
And they hang on until you got Duncan Hunter, who I know is I've hung out with him. He out of San Diego, Duncan Hunter. Shit, that guy hung on until he was literally pleaded guilty.
Right.
He pled guilty for, absolutely abusing taxpayer dollars and donor dollars, and a few other people, Democrats included, that did things. But I'm very still, even after all this time, I could have hung on. I would have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney fees, this and that. I'm glad I did what I did. I got out and I just reassessed my life, and shit's a lot better now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know you then, but I sensed that about you, that you seem really at peace and really just sort of enjoying, where you're at and what's going on. And I think I was going to ask you if you would ever do it again, but I think I already know the answer to that.
Hell no.
Yeah.
No way. No, I have no interest at all in running for anything ever again. I mean, I did it. I enjoyed what I did. I hope that for the, albeit short time I was there, that I set some precedents. I worked extensively with Democrats. I worked extensively with Patrick Murphy on environmental issues because we both have the two rivers that get shit on.
Yep.
Is Port Soucy. I have Fort Myers, the Caloosahatchee. I worked before it was cool to work on criminal justice reform. I was working with the Congressional Black Caucus on mandatory minimums and a whole lot more. I was doing that stuff way before Trump and before it was cool to do. I'm proud of all those things. I really loved it, but to do it again, man, I got my kids who are asleep or coming to bed soon when we get off this, and I get to put them to bed. Today I got to swim with them a little bit. Like, I tossed ball with my kid today. He's apparently going to be a hell of a baseball player. All these things that I would not be able to do if I was gone all the time. And I love it.
Dude, that is probably the best way to wrap this up that I can possibly think of. Like that right there cleared the plate, set the tone. Tell people where they can find you.
Oh, fuck, wherever. I don't know. I'm not here to pimp shit. I mean, I have some books and stuff like that. Just if you're interested in books, I wrote one with Governor George Pataki of New York on 9/11. And I think one thing that you, Jacob, and a lot of the people who follow you and read you, Pataki's take,
God help them,
is that we are in the political position we are today because of a lot of things that happened under W during 9/11, that W and Cheney did not do a great job of healing the country after. Obama exacerbated things, and then you get crazy-ass Trump. I wrote that with Pataki. I got another book about everything that we just talked about.
right.
But, yeah, and I stream a show and blah, 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 whatever. Just if you're interested in anything, just Trey Radel on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever. That's it.
All right. Hang around after the show when we go off the air. I want to chat.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Brother, thanks, man. Trey Radel, appreciate you coming on.
Cheers.
Find him on Twitter. And appreciate all you guys checking us out tonight. Thanks for your patience during the hiatus.
Thank you.
We're back. You're the guy that I wanted. Like, I figured if I'm going to come back after a while, it has to be with you. So thank you, brother.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Cheers.